everybody. It's Anna. So I'm here with this live stream that I planned for last week, but had to um, put off till this week. So I am feeling a bit stronger, a bit more able to do it. So hopefully we'll be able to kind of have this exploration of the Christmas story with the first half of the Major Arcana. So I was actually in church, at my husband's church. I guess it was a couple weeks ago, and my mind was wandering, and I thought, oh, I began thinking through the stages of Christmas, and I thought, oh, look, all these stories, there's a way to line these up with the first part of the Major Arcana. And actually, those of you who noticed, there's a book I wrote a bit ago I called The Gospel According to Tarot. And I look at the life of the adult Christ for the second half of the Major Arcana. And I always kind of felt bad that I left the first part of the Major Arcana out. But I thought maybe I'll do a follow-up to that and kind of make it a Christmas book, because I began seeing how it could come together. So if you're here and you want to check in, please feel free. Let me know if my sound is okay, if you don't mind, because I know that has sometimes been an issue, and I don't know how to check it. So yeah. So if people come in, that'll be great. We can talk together. You can ask your questions or ask for clarification. I also thought, oh wait, let's see. Oh, good. Ash is here saying I sound good. Thank you, Ash. I also thought at the end of this, if you want, we can maybe pull like single cards, maybe for the new year. A lot of people like to use signifier cards, or like cards that connect to themselves. And so, we could do that at the end, because it might be a kind of a long presentation, because I'm going to go through the 9 steps of the first half of the Major Arcana. So it may take a little while, but then we can kind of pull, if you want to pull a card maybe for the year 2025, and we can do it that way. So that's just if you feel up to it. Okay. So the first card of the Major Arcana, which is not really the first card, it's the 0 card. So it doesn't really line up in the trajectory, right? It's the floater card, and that's because it's the Fool, right? I'm going to pull that out. This is my Baroque tarot card, so I'm going to use these cards because they're really cool. I think they're fun. So the Fool is the 0 card. Actually, the Fool is the traveler. The Fool is the piece of the spiritual world that is incarnating on the planet, right? And it's having a journey. So the whole journey of the Major Arcana is actually the Fool, taking the journey. So when I look at the Christmas story and I thought, what would be the Fool? It occurred to me that the Fool is the twinkling from the spiritual realm that wants to be incarnated, wants to be on the planet. And I thought about the words from the Gospel of John, which says, and the Word was with God, and the Word, before in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the idea of the Word coming onto the planet, right? So I think of the Fool as the Word. That's the piece of inspiration or work that actually belongs to the spiritual realm, that wants to make its way into the physical realm. And I think so that's why I also connect the Fool to intuition. I always talk about the Fool and the wild child and intuition as all being a very similar energy, right? And so I think of the intuition is not really being human at all. It really is like this divine spark that's going to have a journey on the physical plane. And as it goes through the Major Arcana, it's learning lessons, it's figuring things out, it's developing a partnership with the mind. So there is this sort of adventure that the Fool is taking. So the Word is, before it is incarnated, it is the Word. It is not yet. It's an idea. It's a concept. It's an inspiration. So the Fool is waiting to be incarnated on the planet, right? So that would be, and that'd be anything. That could also be in the Kabbalah, I would say that could actually be the Kaya, which is the idea of the soul. The soul is in the heavenly realm, looking on the planet, saying, "Okay, I want to come in. I want to do a bit of work." So this is the beginning of everything. Before it makes it here, it has to be dreamed of somewhere, right? So that would be in the Christian story, this will be the Word, which is trying to be incarnate on the planet. And the number 1 step in the Major Arcana, the Magician, right? I don't know if you can quite see that. These are kind of a dark deck, right? But anyway, that's the Magician. And actually, this one does show him pointing one hand to the heavens and one to the ground, right? So the Magician is the one that is the bridge. So the Word is up in the heavenly realm, wanting to be incarnated. It's waiting for someone to say yes. It's waiting for some energy on the planet to say, okay, I'll plant that in my life, right? I think of the Magician as human. This is a human. This is the energy of the mind, right? So this is the part of us that goes, okay, I'm willing to take this journey. I'm willing to plant this word in the ground and kind of be partner with it on its way. So this is like the mind, the mental, the mind, the human mind saying yes. So this is the yes moment. And really this is where the seed gets planted, right? And so in the Christian Christmas story, I would say this is actually the Annunciation. So if you know the story, well, if you don't, I'll just tell it to you. The story is hi Taylor. I'm glad you're here too. So in the Christian story, the angel visits Mary. It's the visitation of the angel to Mary, and the angel tells Mary, "God has chosen you. Like the Word wants to be born on the planet, and you've been chosen to do this." And it waits for her consent. I think that's so important to know. Like she has to say yes, and she says, "I am your servant. I am willing to partner with this. I'm willing to take on the word." So the magician's the moment where Mary goes, "Okay, yes, I will agree to that, you know? So I think that's really important. That's a really important thing to recognize because often the mind, it's such a quiet moment, almost that the mind can forget it agreed. And I think it's really important in the middle of the journey when things get difficult, when we hit crises and confusion, and the mind goes, "Oh my gosh, like where am I?" And being able to say no, the yes was inspired. Even if it feels confusing now and we're lost and we're scared or whatever's happening, this was not, we didn't trip into this. We didn't fall into this. It wasn't pushed upon us. Something in Mary, something in the magician goes, "You know what? I'm up for it. I'm ready for that." And we want to kind of lean into that moment of divine inspiration. So it is a moment of power, not a moment of victimhood. And that's just kind of how I focus on the spiritual journey. Everything's about agency and kind of, I think everything is about agency, but we want to recognize it because if we know we have agency, if we had agency before, we still have it. It's all about kind of orienting into how we can use that agency and be aware of it. So that's the magician where I would say Mary says yes, or yeah, where Mary says yes. Okay, so the next is the 2 card in the Major Arcana, which is the High Priestess, right? And the High Priestess is, I talk about the pregnancy card, the germination card. So really, the High Priestess is the Advent, which is what we are in right now in the season of Christmas, where it's the time of waiting, the time of rooting in. The seed is in the ground, and it's kind of settling in, it's germinating, it's getting strong, it's preparing itself to manifest on the physical plane, right? And so I often, this is an integration time. I talk about how we have action steps. The magician's an action step. It's agency, very, very clear agency. This is where we're in partnership with the universe, and there's doesn't seem like there's a lot that we're doing right now. Really, we're kind of following along with our instincts here because the work is underground. It's in a mystical place, and so we're just following our instincts in how to support that. So if you're talking about a literal pregnancy, this is, you take naps when you feel like it, you follow your cravings, you do things that feel like they make sense. And also there's the idea of you're nesting, you're preparing the way, right? You're preparing something here. So you're not birthing yet. The baby's not here, right? You're getting ready for something that is coming and you're doing your best to follow these mystical inspirations to get you there. So I would say the 2 point is actually where there's 2 things I would say. Well, there's a few things I'd say with the 2 point. That actually a lot happens during the Advent in the Christian story. One is that Joseph, who is Mary's betrothed, also gets a visit from an angel. And that visit tells Joseph, go ahead and take care of Mary. She's not been unfaithful to you. This child is God's child. And so, you've been chosen as well to be the father, to be the protector. And so basically, while the Advent is happening, the universe is working around Mary to make things work for her, right? Like it's aligning the right circumstances, the right support systems. So even though she's sort of resting and growing this baby, things are happening around her to make this work for her. So that's the caretaking of the universe. And that's when I say the High Priestess is about recognizing we're in partnership with the universe and we're giving space for that. And we're also kind of flowing with that, right? So Joseph, gets the message from angel and he agrees. They get married. So he's agreed to be her partner in this and to make this happen. But another thing that happens is there's an edict goes out across the land saying that everyone is going to be taxed, right? So this is actually a government rule that everybody has to go back to their hometown and be taxed, right? And so Mary and Joseph, they're of the house of David, and they're to go back to Bethlehem. So in the middle of this Advent, there is this sort of, a secular government is making this proclamation. And so they travel. She's very pregnant at this time, which I can't imagine being very much fun. But they travel from Nazareth, which is where they were living, to Bethlehem to have the baby. And so this is a very familiar story for anyone who knows the Christmas story, right? And it seems like this is a huge, I always thought when I was a child, this is a huge inconvenience because she's pregnant. They're moving away from family. She's moving away from her resources. But actually, as an adult, when I think about it, and also from different experiences I've had, where she was in Nazareth, there's no doubt that everyone around her probably thought she had, she was disloyal to Joseph, or Joseph and she had sex outside of marriage. I mean, so this is not a great situation she's in. She's in a precarious situation and sort of an ill-famed one, right? It's not the best place to bring life onto the planet, right? But in Bethlehem, the Bethlehem is the seat of David. Okay, so this is their birthplace. This is where they belong and where they will be received because they are family. This is a hospitable place. Now, this is really, I think, really important because I think the way Western people tell the story of the Nativity, I think it's not correct. We like to tell it like, oh, they were struggling and nobody opened their doors for them. There was no room for them at the inn. Okay. I mean, it's a very dramatic kind of like Hollywood story, right? But if you've ever been to Israel, and actually I did, I was in Israel when I was in seminary, I visited, and they were talking about, hospitality in the Middle East and including the nation of Israel. Hospitality is very, very important. If you do not practice hospitality, you're responsible for the people who die because you didn't take care of them. So the idea that they're rejected and they're pushed out doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense culturally to the nature of hospitality in the Middle East and practiced by the people of Israel. And also, this is their home. This is Bethlehem, the seat of David, so these are relatives. These are people who value them, right? So this idea that there's no space for them, right? What came up in this conversation is that they were looking for the right space because it was crowded because this edict had gone out and all these people are now in Bethlehem to be taxed, right? And the space they found for them was the stable. And in the Middle Eastern world, or at least the house I visited, they were describing this. The stable's under the house. It's not a barn. Like in our culture, there's a barn and they put them out in the barn and with the cows it's like that feels very like dismissive, right? But in this, the way they built their homes and their stables, it was under the house, which was a place that was warm and safe and it was private, right? It wasn't one of the regular, it wasn't a family room where people are all kind of sleeping in bunks or like on the floors together. It was a space where she could be supported and really have the space and privacy she needed and the warmth and the safety to have this baby. So it's a very different idea than what we tend to give as Western Christians, I would say. We like to make it dramatic and like the world's against them, but no, the world wasn't against them. Actually, that edict set up a cooperative place where they could be deeply celebrated. This is a baby being born to the house of David. We love babies. We're excited for babies. We're going to put them in the safest, warmest, most private spot. We're going to bring in the midwives. There's no question. There were midwives there. They would just not treat a child of David in the house of David with anything less than deep love and hospitality and caretaking. And so that edict removed them from a place that was maybe a bit questionable. Maybe they were getting some ugly looks. Maybe, she's maybe not such a clean girl or whatever the rules are and the distractions are. All that's gone. They're in the house of David in this place where they can be supported. So I like that. I like that interpretation a lot better. Like that the universe was working on their behalf and setting up the exact right space for them to have everything they needed, so that this would be a safe, loving, gentle place to come into the world. So So during the High Priestess, even though we're not in charge of what's happening, right? We're kind of subject to mystery. Mystery is working on our behalf, and learning how to flow with that, learning how to agree to it and to trust it. I think that's one of the key challenges of all of the steps of integration in the Major Arcana, but especially the High Priestess. So I talked a lot about the High Priestess. So now we're going to move on to, hi Bonzo. We're going to move on to the 3 spot, right? Which is the Empress. And that's the birthing, right? She's the manifestation, the card for manifestation. Let me look at her really quickly. So, yeah, I like the Rider-Waite Empress a little bit better because I'm just familiar with her, I think. But also I like her because she's on a chase lounge. And this lady, no, she's in a throne. She's not really chill. Like in the Rider-Waite, the Empress is like laying on a chase lounge, right? So even though she's manifesting all of this stuff into the world, and she was the source through which all this stuff is birthing, right? She's also very relaxed and at ease. There's a sense of deep peace in her. So I'm going to think about that Empress. This Empress is very lovely, but it's just not quite the same feeling and there's a river flowing from underneath her. There's flowers and there's weed around her. There's a forest in the background. And there's all of this nature. She's sort of surrounded by all of this nature. And she's just kind of blissful in this state of all of this beauty she is surrounded by. And she's part of, because she's the creative element that brings it onto the planet. So the Empress is the point that the birth happens, that the manifestation that's been in the ground pops up, and we can see it, we can recognize it, and now we can get to know it, because before it was hidden from us. Now we can see what it is we are birthing. And so the image of the Empress, of course, is the birth. And again, we have what I like about the nativity that we think of, at least the Christian nativity, is that, Mary's in this place that's warm and safe. There's Joseph there protecting her. There's animals, surrounding her, which feels very much like the Empress, like she's surrounded by animals and birth. And also there's some shepherds that come and they bring their little sheep. There's this idea like there's nature is surrounding her, the elements of nature, the support system that celebrates life and is there to create an acknowledgement of life. And actually I think it's in Luke, and probably in other places too, but I know Luke especially talks about Mary ponders these things in her heart. Like, so she's looking at all these things around her and she ponders them. She lets herself savor it and settle in, which I do think is very Empress-like. So even though there's this big kind of dramatic birthing, right? Because, well, my experience of birthing, it was very dramatic. Even though there's this dramatic birthing, there's also a sense of, and here it is, and all is well. And I can savor the fact that all is well and let myself like be in flow with that. I talk about the Empress a lot. Like, I think of creative flow as being almost engaged but relaxed, right? Where we get stuck in creative flow is usually because our minds are jumping out of the flow and like wondering, well, how's it going to work out? But what happens next? But blah blah. Like, it's already jumping ahead into what might happen next, instead of staying in this moment and trusting that whatever happens next, we'll be ready for it. When the next thing comes, we'll be ready for the next thing. But right now we're in this place. So I think the Empress would be the birth, right? The nativity itself. So now we're going to go to the 4 part, which is the Emperor. And the Emperor is good father energy. So clearly he just looks like an emperor. He doesn't look like a father. He looks nice, but what I like about the Rider-Waite is that there's 4 pieces to the throne. Like, it feels like a very stable throne. There's a ram's head. There's something very like heavy and weighty about it. And I think that that's the energy of the good father. It's a very strong, a sense of strength and purposefulness, and also steadiness. Like, the number 4 connects to having a firm foundation on which to build. There's strength, there's power there, right? And that's the good father energy. There's a strength to the good father energy that says, it really is a servant energy. And that's also a masculine energy. This is where the mind strategizes. The mind makes plans, creates strategies, creates, plans of how it's going to, and these plans are all about taking care of this household, taking care of the mother and child. Like, that is the singular purpose of this masculine energy. And I would say that's the singular purpose of the mind. Now, in the spiritual journey, the challenge the mind has as a human mind is that it gets lots of multiple conversations about what it should be doing, people expect it to do. Like it gets a little bit distracted, or maybe sometimes very distracted by all of the outside theories of what it should be doing, right? But I would say in its truest purpose, the mind's job is to take care of the thing that has been brought onto the planet. Its job is to take care of the intuitions, the word is on the planet, and we're going to help that word be safe and grow and do what it's here to do. That's my singular purpose, is to make that happen. So I think Joseph in the position, I'm going to come back to him because I'm going to come back to this in a minute, but his job, so he's there too. He's there to make sure she's safe, make sure that the midwives are there, make sure that, that the little sheep don't like step on the baby, whatever the rule is. He's there to make sure the baby is safe. And actually the reason they're where they are already is because Joseph was advocating on her behalf. He's the one that made the plans and brought her to this place. So he's been acting as the father for a while now. And, so we think about masculine energy. It's interesting because I think this is very caretaking, nurturing energy. And in our world, we tend to make that feminine energy, but only because mothers are kind of hormonally predisposed to do this. So when you think of mother bear energy, that's masculine energy. That's not feminine energy. That's I'm going to take you out if you endanger my cub, right? Even if a woman's doing it, it's still masculine energy. And of course, that's the truth of the spiritual journey. We have both. We have all of us have masculine and feminine spirituality. And the whole point of the journey is learning how to bring them into partnership together. An outside person is not going to be able to provide for you what you're missing internally. You can't look to somebody else to give you the feminine energy or the masculine energy. I mean, you can, and you can sort of make do with that, but ultimately your stability and your sense of integrity comes from developing both of these energies in yourself. So these are archetypes, right? But in our work in the spiritual journey, we need both. We don't just pick intuition or the mind. We have to do both. So all that being said, so Joseph represents the good father energy. He's going to come back. So I'm going to set him right here. We're going to go to the Hierophant energy, right? Hierophant. And this guy, he does look like the Pope, right? So the Hierophant in the red or white does look like the Pope. It's the leader of the church, right? I was gonna see who's here. Oh, hi, new life bitch. Good to see you. Okay, so the Hierophant is the 5 mark in the Major Arcana. So it's the point that we leave the private world behind and come into the public sphere. And so I associate the Hierophant with the Magi, who are the wise men who are from another country. They're not part of Jesus' kin. They're not part of the kin group here. Everyone in Bethlehem is related. They're all part of the house of David. This is not even people from Israel. These are other people who have read the stars in the sky, who've read the signs and have traveled, right, to come to see this baby. So they represent the wider world, and they represent the acknowledgement of the wider world. They see a new thing is here. It is coming to impact the world. And they're kind of the caretakers, the acknowledgers of that, which I think is the role of the Hierophant. It's the energy that says, okay, you've got a gift. It belongs to the larger world, right? And we're going to help acknowledge that, help bring that awareness and that energy into the world. And they bring resource, which is what the Hierophant does, right? They bring gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And each of those is representative of what this gift is. So gold is representing royalty, frankincense represents righteousness, and myrrh represents death. So there's this idea of bringing these gifts that say, this is what this energy is on the planet. We acknowledge it. We give it resource. We give it support. And when we are ready to go into the public sphere, I think that's what the Hierophant does for us. It says, yes, I see you. I recognize you. I will give you resource so that you can go into the larger community and be acknowledged and make your way into the world. Now, so the Hierophant's going into the public sphere. The reason this is the 5 card, which is the challenge point, is because this makes us visible. When you're in the little creche, when you're in the basement, in the stable, in the house, all that's around you is family. You're relatively safe. You're kind of hidden from the world. This is the point you become visible in the world, and that's scary. That's a challenge. And before you do that, you have to feel safe, which means before you go into the public sphere, You have to know that your emperor has your back. Your good father energy is there to protect you should you need it. And that's exactly what happens in the Christmas story. Because when the Magi show up, when the Hierophant shows up and acknowledges the king, Herod, the literal king of Israel, or he was in the position of king, he meets them and he finds out this. Now by this time, this is not a baby anymore. Just so you know, I know the Magi are always like in the nativity scene, but they show up like 3 years later. So these aren't, this is a 3-year-old or a toddler or something. It's older. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But the point is, when the Magi show up, Herod meets the Magi because these are important people. These are impressive people, and he finds out that they're going to go see the baby or the child, and he sees the child as a threat. And now the child is visible. Right now he knows, oh, these Magi are saying they've been following the stars. They know where the baby is. So he says, go show me this baby because I want to acknowledge him too. Of course, he doesn't want to acknowledge the baby. He wants to kill the baby. That's how the story plays out in the Gospel of Matthew. By the way, all the Gospels tell the story a bit differently. So there isn't one story. There's at least 4 different stories. But Matthew is where Herod's going to go kill the baby. So an angel comes to Joseph in a dream. So here the Magi are. They come and acknowledge the baby. The baby's visible. It's a moment of kind of inbreaking. He's recognized by the world. He's visible to the world. Then Herod finds out, and there's some danger. So the angels come. An angel comes visits Joseph and says, the baby's in danger, or the child's in danger. And so Joseph whisks his family off into Egypt in the middle of the night. So that again is that good father energy that says, I will stand between this gift, this calling, this purpose, that the incarnate word, I will stand between that and danger. So again, that is the role of the good father. It's protection, it's provision. And the reason I kind of like the fact that these are both popping up. We went from the emperor to the Hierophant back to the emperor is because that is how we do things in our spiritual path. I mean, the Major Arcana is linear in the sense that it does go step by step, and you can definitely take the journey step by step. And I've done it with multiple groups of people where we walk through all of the lessons of the Major Arcana. It's a great way to learn the Major Arcana. But you're also, especially in this case, you're always toggling back and forth between the Hierophant and the Emperor, which means you are here to give blessing to the world. You are here to be seen and visible, but your well-being is equally as important, and your own safety and your sense of provision. So it's easy to get kind of locked almost in one or the other. And for most of my clients, they get locked in the Hierophant, which is I'm serving the world. I'm giving my gift to the world. That's what I get locked in. And I forget to protect, defend, provide for myself. And so learning how to toggle back and forth between the good father and the Hierophant is really important. These are both also masculine spiritual energy. So they're in the mind, which means the mind we want the mind to learn the signs. Like, when is it that I need to step back into my private space? When do I need a break? When do I need to have a nap or have some good food or be in a safe private space? And the mind knowing how to acknowledge that and provide for that. The mind is the one who makes our way on the physical plane. So that's why it's, as I say, it's important to really develop. If you're going to be motivated and kind of bringing something from intuition on the planet, the intuition doesn't know how to protect or provide for itself. It's spiritual energy, right? It's the mind strategy and the mind learning how to align itself with the purpose that makes this possible. So if this good father energy wasn't in place, the baby would have been killed. When it became visible, the baby would get killed. And by the way, most people who are creative intuitives have been killed. We have had that experience of being slaughtered. I definitely like I was in the world, wasn't quite prepared, didn't have my good father energy intact, and I got knocked off my hiney, right? So most of us have had experiences where we went into the world, and I'm not saying it's a mistake. I'm saying this is how you learn. You go into the world, you're not quite prepared. You don't quite have your foundation set. You don't have all of your really your self-care intact. You don't even know what you need yet. You go in the world and you get knocked off your hiney, and then you have to start over. You have to start over with a new the beginning again, right? But the many times you do this, you start to recognize the necessity of both of these energies being attacked. The mind's job is to do them both, not to just be productive in the world, but to also be caretaking in the world. And that's where the mind really starts gaining some mastery. Okay, so I've talked about this a lot, so I guess I'm going to move on. Hi, Robert. Okay, so we had the 4 Emperor, 5 Hierophant. They're going back and forth. So Joseph rescued his family, took them to Egypt. The good father made sure his child and wife were safe. Then, of course, he comes back, and they're back in Nazareth, and he establishes a home, which is what the good father does. So now we've got the baby, or the young child is safe and provided for. His dad's a carpenter. His mom's taking care of him. It's all good, right? The next card after the 5 is the 6, and that's the Lovers. Now, this literally shows lovers, which, I don't really read the Lovers card that way. So they're like literally like a man and woman, like kissing. So in the Rider-Waite, there is a man and woman, and they're under the wings of an angel. And I think of that, and they're kind of like, it feels like Garden of Eden-ish, kind of feels like they're in a garden, right, together. And I think of the number 6 card is about harmony and integrity. And so we went from the 5s. The Hierophant breaks us into the world, shows the world who we are. Then we find we create harmony. We create connections and partnerships. That's what the Lovers is about. It's about, I come in the planet as I am. I kind of hone my light, which means I'm in the world. I'm getting challenges, sometimes getting confusion, getting mismatches. As I do that, I'm learning more and more who I am. I'm becoming more and more solid in who I am. And as I become solid in my own energy, really understanding the nature of my gifts, the nature of my expression of gifts, I start attracting to myself partners that are the matches for me. And those are the Lovers, whether it's romantic or not, those are the Lovers. And this is the card I connect to when Jesus was 12. There's a story of how Mary and Joseph took him to the temple when he was 12. And so they were in the temple. They went to celebrate. I think it must have been the Passover, I believe. I don't remember for sure. I think it's the Passover. So they go to Jerusalem to the Passover. They're heading home, and they both think that that Jesus is with one or the other. Mary and Joseph are traveling, I guess, in a big crowd of people, and they each think the other one has Jesus. So I don't know how long they go before they realize. I don't think they don't get all the way back to Nazareth, I don't think. But anyway, at some point they realize Jesus is missing, right? So they rush back to Jerusalem. They look for him, and they find him in the temple. He's in the temple chatting with some rabbis, right? And he's chatting like he's very confident what he's saying. He's talking about what he believes. The rabbis are listening to him. It's a really interesting moment where it's like there's a connection. There's like a partnership here, and it's because he is speaking. He's sharing who he is, and there's something about the way he shares. There's something about his experience of God that the rabbis, or maybe they were priests too, but maybe they were priests actually. They're all listening. They're all talking, and so Mary comes back and sees this. And I think that's the moment that it's like he finds his place. He begins to realize, this is who I am. I'm here. My work is a holy work. It's connected to this relationship to God. The temple for the Israelite people was the place, their connection. I mean, like a literal connection to God, the literal place where they met with God or they sacrificed to God, all those things. So it's like his work is going to be here in the temple, although not literally, because he doesn't actually become a priest, right? But this idea, this connection to God, like that's his work, is this connection to God. And I feel like, I didn't look back at this, I feel like he's almost challenging them. He's pushing on them. He's expanding, arguing, like from his perspective, what is possible. And actually in Jesus' later life, that connection to God is kind of free from the temple, because it's like the connection's internal. That becomes part of the way Jesus teaches and expands the understanding of the connection to God. So in this moment, they are drawn to him. He's drawn a crowd of people who want to hear what he has to say. So I think of that as the Lovers moment, where he's really finding his feet almost. He's kind of stepping into this internal brilliance he has, and drawing the attention of people who are like, yeah, let's hear more of that. Okay. So that'd be the 6th moment. Hi, Bonnie. Okay. So now that was the 6 Lovers. Now we got the 7 Chariot, right? So the Chariot in this image, it's actually moving, okay. So, Rider-Waite's my deck, right? And I do think the art in this is really pretty, but the more time I spend with it, I'm like, well, there's some things I don't like about it. And this is one, because in the Rider-Waite, the chariot's not in movement, right? The chariot's stationary, and the charioteer is looking over the horizon. And I think of the seven as making a choice, right? The seven's about discernment and wisdom and surfacing your choice. So in that, I love the rider Waite because there's no movement in the chariot just yet. It's being still because the charioteer is deciding where he wants to go, right? And I also talk about the decision coming from a place of joy because I think of the number seven because I connect the major arcana also to the Enneagram, which is a whole nother thing I do. The number seven in the Enneagram is the gift of joy. So I think of the surfacing is not just what's the reasonable thing to do or the smart thing to do or the predictable thing to do. It actually is what's the thing that lights me on fire. That's how the seven, that's how the decision of the charioteer is made in my system and the way I think of it, right? So I think of the seven moments. So here Jesus is amongst the people who are just, and his parents have been frantic probably for a couple of days, wondering where he is. He's just having a nice little time chatting with the priests or the rabbis, just sharing, and they're all kind of fascinated by him. They're all listening to him. They're all drawn to him. This kind of beautiful harmony, that integrity that comes with the lover's card. So his mother finds him. His parents find him. And Mary says to him, "What were you thinking?" I'm paraphrasing. "What were you thinking? Didn't you know we would be terrified? We would be so upset. Didn't you know how awful this would be for us when we realized you were missing?" And Jesus, little 12-year-old Jesus says, "Well, didn't you know I'd be in my Father's house?" And I think that's the seven moment where he goes, "But this is my Father's house. Your house is not my house. This is my house." And that's the choice where we say, you know what? This is what I'm doing. I'm not doing what other people are doing, what you expect, what you might have thought I was going to do, what you expected me to do, even maybe what you wanted me to do. There's that choice where it's like, but this is what sets me on fire. This is the path that connects to my deepest wisdom and my purpose on the planet. Didn't you know that your house was not my house? This is my house. I don't mean the literal temple. You know what I mean? Like this is the house I will live in. This is the house I will grow in. This is what I choose. And I think creative intuitives like me, I'm sure lots of people have this experience, but I just know from my own experience, that's the moment where you go, okay, this is who I am. This is actually who I am. I've been in the world for a while. The Hierophant brought me into the world. I've had some integration. I've had some support. I've had some camaraderie, some support, some harmony, some integration. Now I'm ready to make a choice that may even defy logic or expectations or linearity because this is what sets me on fire. So that moment where he's just, I just imagine still 12-year-old being like, "Why are you so upset, Mom?" Like my 17-year-old now calls me Ma for some reason. He'll say, "Ma, why are you so upset, Ma?" So I think of my own 17-year-old and just going like, Didn't you know? Didn't you know? This is what I choose. This is my Father's house." So it's a pretty powerful moment, I think. And it's a powerful moment in our lives in the path where we go, I'm ready. I'm all in. I'm choosing. I'm choosing what my heart calls me to. I'm ready. I'm ready to burn up this world and bring the light that I'm here to bring. Hi, Bonnie. And then the last card is the 8, right? No, not we got one more card. So this is the strength card. Okay, so the strength is about, actually I kind of like this one because it's a woman and the lion, right? And it's the angel, actually the angel line, because in the Rider Waite it's definitely angel. And here we actually do have the infinity sign. So there's this infinity sign right over the angel. And so in the Rider Waite, there's this kind of kinship between the angel and the lion. The angel's like, "Yes, I love you." And there's a support for the lion, right? Like, you can be who you are here to be. There's an acceptance of that lion. And that's what the strength really is. It's not the strength to control the lion or cage the lion. It's like the strength to love the lion as it is. And I think, so in the 8, the gift is for us to make peace with the thing we've been scared of. Like if people have told us, well, you really need to behave properly. You really need to, we've been told to cage the lion, to behave properly, to be civilized, all the things that we've been told, all the rules we've been given that say, this is what makes you feel comfortable to me and you acceptable to me, right? The angel says, exactly as you are. You are built exactly as you are. I am here to love you and support you and to give you unconditional love. And so that's the moment where the lion is free. The lion is free to be itself. And also because every part of us just wants to be loved, including the lion, including that vital energy within ourselves, because the angel gives all this love and kindness. Um, the lion agrees to relationship and offers that energy back. So now we've got a combination of this divine love, this divine kindness, and this powerful vital energy. They're together now. They're connected, not from a place of control or manipulation, but from a place of true love and trust and faith, right? And I think this is Mary. When he says, "Didn't you know? Didn't you know I'd be in my father's house?" No, because we don't have much information about Mary, right? Because they just kind of, she gets observed a few times. So one of the observations of Mary is she ponders this in her heart, and there's another place where she ponders, and I feel like because we don't hear him getting in trouble. He doesn't he doesn't get grounded. He doesn't nothing. It's almost like she goes, okay, okay, this is who you are. All right, all right. I'm going to support and love that, like the angel with the lion. Like I'm not going to try to control you. I'm not going to get on to you. I'm not going to judge you. I'm going to say, yes, yes, I will create a space for you to be loved in. And I think that's such a lovely idea. And of course, I'm midrashing. In the Hebrew tradition, there's a tradition called midrash, right, where you take a scripture and you play with it, you imagine it, you go past it. So a lot of this is me midrash. All of this is me midrashing, right? So it's all me midrashing and saying what I think, what I imagine. But I imagine that moment where Mary goes, okay. Because by the way, Mary was told from the beginning this was going to be a special child, right? So she's known this child had the word was coming incarnate. It had its own purpose, its own agenda from the beginning. And now the child saying, this is who I am. And she goes, all right, all right. And so I think of that as a lovely way of thinking of the strength card. And the final card is the 9, and that's the Hermit. And the Hermit's this lovely, wise old man of the tarot, right? He walks into he knows when it's time to be quiet, to withdraw, to retreat, and to surface wisdom. So he's going to take some time. I imagine him like going in his little cave and sitting and having some nice soup or some nice tea and just like letting the truth be born in him. At this point, we made our choice, we've walked in strength, and now we settle into this place of integrity and promulgating wisdom. I almost think this is very similar to actually the High Priestess. The 2 is the idea that something is now being birthed in me, but it's not a new thing. In the High Priestess, it's just that the new thing, it's a seed, right? Now it's not a seed, it's a plant. And it's now ready to bloom. It's ready to fruit, right? And so the Hermit's tending to the plant, waiting for the fruit. And when it's ready, the Hermit takes the fruit that he has tended and he brings it back to the world. So I think of the Hermit as actually all of the quiet that happens. Like between Jesus in the temple and Jesus at the Jordan, which is where he's baptized by John as a 30-year-old, nothing. We don't now. I will say this. I'm talking about the canonical gospels, which are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We don't have anything about Jesus after he's 12 until he's 30, right? Now, there are other gospels that are like the Dead Sea Scrolls that have different pieces of story. So there is some other stuff, but I'm just talking about the canonical gospels that we have in the canonical Bible. But so there's a time of quiet, like everything goes quiet for a while. And I think of that's the Hermit. That's Jesus. He's made his choice. He's communicated his choice. Mary's saying his parents, I'll say his parents are saying, okay, we're gonna support this. And now he grows. And actually the scripture does that he grows in power and in faith and in wisdom. So that's the Hermit, and I really like the Hermit. I really like to make a point of the Hermit. This is not a recluse, right? I think because when we think of the word hermit, we have an idea, kind of a cultural idea of the hermit that's in the cave and he's got his gun, he's going to shoot you if you bother. This idea of he's against the world. The Hermit's not against the world. The Hermit just knows it's time to retreat from the world because he has important business to do and he needs to focus on, he needs to settle into that place and like let it surface. And he's doing it for the purpose of bringing it back as blessing. So there's not an intention to abandon the world. It's not even self-care. I say this a lot with the Hermit. He's not leaving because he's tired. He's leaving because he's inspired. because he can feel something tickling. Some like the tree is getting ready to fruit. And he's like, yeah, everything, I'm ignore everything else and just focus on this, give it what it needs, pray over it, sing over it, whatever I need to do, meditate over it, so that when the fruit comes, I know it, I can collect it, and I can bring it to the world. So there you go. That's my hi Taylor. Oh, good. I'm glad this is helpful to you. So yeah, I just thought that was it was just kind of fun as I was sitting there not listening to my husband's sermon because I don't always listen, but I was like, I wonder how this could line up. And the more I thought about it, the more excited I get, because I love story in general. I love and I've been raised on the Christian story and the Hebrew story since I was very little. So like I've always loved playing with the story and imagining the story. And that's actually how I see the tarot as well. It's another way of telling the story. And it's always the same story. So whatever you want to say about like they're not different stories, right? And even lately, a few of my clients have said things like, "Oh, when I was looking at this like system, and it's the same. It has the same message as the tarot." I'm like, "Yeah," because at some level, if you kind of let yourself play, not get attached to your tools, right? They're just tools. The tools just help you access your wisdom. But if you let yourself play long enough in your own wisdom and your own inspiration, we always come to this common ground, which is it's just true, and it's fun. And it's really fun to me to like trace the story all the way to the roots and go, oh, look, the Christmas story does match the first part of the Major Arcana. Look at that. So anyway, yeah, that's all I had to say for today. And if anybody, I mentioned at the beginning, so I don't know if you guys were here at that point, if you wanted to pull cards, like one card, like a signifier card for 2025, we could do that as well. So if you want to do that, I can hang out a little bit and see. I might just pull a signifier card for myself. I don't usually use signifier cards. People will use it sometimes when they pull a spread. Like almost like it stands in for you. I think it's supposed to. But I don't usually use it. But sometimes it might be fun. So I'll just pull one, and then if you guys want to pull one, you can. And actually, I don't have my. Yeah, I didn't actually shuffle these, so I might have shuffled them in front of you. I'm afraid I might drop them. Also, I took out all of my first Major Arcana cards. I guess I should put them back in. Yeah. Well, I will tell you that 2025 is a 9 year. It reduces to 9, which means we're coming into the year of the Hermit, which I'm like, you know what? I could use a little Hermit energy in my life. I could use a little settling into the cave and like praying and singing over the quiet, and because this was an 8 year. 2024 is an 8 years. That's about strength and flow and momentum, and that's really a lot of fun, right? There's a lot of fun to that, but it's nice. It's nice. It's nice to then step back into that 9, like letting the universe be in charge, and like kind of being mindful of the universe, is that you're not doing it by yourself. I think it's so easy, especially someone like me who's an assertive energy, right? To like get caught in the idea that because I am active, I am moving things. I'm a mover and a shaker, right? It's easy to begin to think that it's dependent on me. Everything's dependent on me. If I don't show up, it doesn't happen. And I think it's really important for the mind to learn, no, if I don't show up, the universe shows up. It'll show up in some other way. Like it's not a one-man show. I am not the center of the universe. Turns out I'm not the center of the universe. So the mind really learning that. And I think the 9 is a perfect example. Like in that point, you are now receiving. You're settling in, calming yourself down, not being too active, because you're now trying to be a receptor, right? And that means don't distract yourself with a lot of activity and don't fill yourself up. You're actually emptying yourself now to be a receptor. So, okay, I'm going to just pull one card for just generally for the year 2025. Ace of Swords. Okay, that's neat. Okay, let me think about that, because I think the ace is the beginning point, swords is the mind. So this is like the beginning point of the mind learning something new. And that is not a bad card for a hermit year. If you think about it, because the mind's saying, yeah, I'm willing to receive the new insight. So the hermit's in the cave, waiting for the thing to bloom, waiting for the tree to fruit, right? we don't really know what the fruit's going to look like just yet. We don't really have a plan for what we're going to do with that fruit when it comes, right? We just know we're going to trust it and move forward with it. And so the mind being open, being ready, being kind of light on its feet, because it's like, yeah, I will start a new path with you here. I think that that's always very good for the mind, because the mind can get, as I said earlier, it can get very locked into what it thinks is true, because the mind learns through repetition. So if you've repeated the same thing and the same tools over and over and over again, the mind begins to mistake the tools for the truth. The tools are just the tools, right? They're not, you could throw out the tarot. It's just a tool, right? And I think the mind in the one spot says, I'm ready to learn a new tool. I'm ready to find a new way of thinking. I'm not attached. I'm willing to let it all go and see what else is possible. So I think there's something really nice about that being a signifier maybe for the year of the Hermit. Okay, so let's see if anybody else got when they pulled. Okay, let's see. Whoops. So there's Bonzo pulled a 4 of Wands. Okay, so the 4 is about balance. It's the good father energy. It's the good father energy, the 4, right? So it's about having a foundation, stability, a home, a place where you feel strong. And Wands are about passion and fire and confidence. And in the Rider-Waite, that's the marriage card. It's the image is a wedding ceremony. So it's like you're starting something new. You're kind of you're in your passion, in your flow, and you've got these people who are like, yes, we're supporting you, we're for you, we're creating a space in which you are safe. So it's also very Emperor energy. So the idea for me is like, yeah, with that 4 of Wands and the Hermit, that's really kind of a nice combination if you think about it, because the Hermit, we do tend to think of the Hermit as being isolated, but he's not isolated. He's just he's taking a break, right? The Hermit is doing what he's doing in part because he is connected to all these people who are loving him. I also think of the Hermit as being like the shaman who in some cultures lives on the edge of the village. Like he's in the village, but he's also on the edge of the village, halfway into the wilderness, right? And this ability to sort of, and the reason he does what he does is because the village is counting on him. They're supporting him. They're excited for him. So thinking about the Hermit as the shaman, being able to kind of toggle between going to the wilderness, finding the gift, bringing it back to your people, having your community, having the people who deeply benefit from you. So that's kind of a nice way to put those together. Energy Art says the devil. Devil's awesome. Okay, so the devil card is about breaking free. And it's interesting too, because the devil, I think of the Hermit as sort of being in the cave. I don't know why I keep thinking of the Hermit in the cave. That's just how I think of the Hermit, right? Well, the devil's in a cave too. There's a devil's cave in the Rider-Waite. So they're both in caves, right? And they're both, the Hermit's going into the cave to bring forth a gift. Well, the gift comes from the devil's cave too, because the devil's cave almost shows up. I think of it as being like a chronic kind of situation we're in that we don't even really see it, because it's almost like we've lived with it for so long. It's just a condition of life. As far as we know, it's a condition of life. As we said before, the mind learns from repetition. So let's say this has been going on for your whole life. That your mind's like, well, this is just what life is, right? But in the devil, you suddenly look around and go, wait a minute. I don't have to live here. You suddenly have that moment of clarity, of realization. And the gift is, that's the point you can say, I can actually break free of this. Something you didn't know you could break free from. Suddenly you can. And so I think there's something really neat about the devil's cave. Is like you're biding your time until suddenly you see it. Suddenly the revelation. And in the image, you've got these two people that got the rings around their necks, the chains, but they're really big, which means if they ever lift it, they'll be able to take the chain right off their heads. So suddenly you realize you've got this power, that you didn't know. You didn't know you had this option, but you do. And this energy is sort of available to you to break free. So that's a really nice kind of play between the Hermit and the devil, I think. Fun. Bonzo says, what is the difference between the Hermit and the Hanged Man? So the Hermit, if you actually walk through the Major Arcana, I will just say the first half of the Major Arcana is kind of about how you locate yourself on the physical plane. And you can actually see through the Christ story, like where are the support systems? It's sort of like setting up your physical life in such a way that you're steady, you're strong, you're supported, all the things you need, right? So the Hermit is the point where we're kind of settled, we're integrating all the things we've done, we're integrating it into this sort of place of fruitfulness. The Hanged Man is the second half of the Major Arcana, I think, is more subtle, and I think it's harder. Okay? It's a harder part of the journey because to do it, you have to have already established all your roots, all your stability. So the Hermit's like we're settling in. They're similar in the activity in the sense that there's integration. That's what you see. Like the 2 is integrating, the 9's integrating. So that there's some of that theme is the same. It's happening all along. But the Hanged Man is like it's not like with the Hermit, you kind of feel like, okay, I'm going to bring something to the planet. And I've kind of been very deliberately developing something. Hangman almost comes at you out of the blue. And it's like everything just stops. And you go, what? Oh, what happened here? And it's so upsetting. It's so upsetting that the mind can get very rambunctious with Hanged Man in a way that it doesn't really seem to like. It's almost like the Hermit feels like the mind's being primed for it and it's ready to sort of rest and integrate and enjoy. Hanged Man almost feels like it's interrupting your journey. Because it is interrupting. Well, it's not. It feels like it is because you're in this good flow. You're feeling really strong and suddenly everything stops. And the problem with that is it really is very disruptive for the mind. So for the mind to successfully navigate Hanged Man, it has to really have learned some lessons about faith, about patience, about being blind. And I think that you have to work towards that. The mind has to be kind of has to have lots of experiences of walking in faith, pausing, waiting for the universe to act. So Hermit is sort of laying the groundwork for Hanged Man, if that makes sense. Because then once you've done Hermit and the mind's done Hermit a few times, it goes, okay, good things happen in the cave. If I can sit long enough and be patient, something really amazing is going to happen. With Hanged Man, the mind needs that lesson. Almost it has to be pretty solid. Otherwise, the mind will fight Hanged Man because it feels like you're it feels like it feels like you're dead almost. Like Hanged Man it's like things are flat, these are boring, you're not inspired. It's a very upsetting experience for the mind. and for the mind to be able to feel okay about that and agree to that, it has to have a lot of experience. I don't know if that helps answer the question, but it is another integration point. That's where they're similar. Let's see. Clarifier. 10 of Swords. Okay, 10 of Swords. Okay, so the 10 of Swords is yeah, I mean, it's the completion of the Swords trajectory, right? It actually is close to the 1 of Swords. Almost it's the same card because the 10 of Swords is the release. It's the release of the old thing. And the guy is laying flat on his face at the seashore with the swords in his back. And it's like the mind is successful. It's successfully released its old way of thinking, its old way of being. It's cleared the path for the 1 of Swords. And the 10 and the 1, they reduce to the same thing. So the 10 and the 1 are probably like the same movement, right? So the old thing is gone and the mind's ready, free and clear for the new thing. And whatever the Hermit's bringing, the mind's like, yep, ready for it. So I think that's really cool. Also it's 222. Yeah, well, here it's 122, but I hear what you're saying. So, all right. Well, I think this has been really fun. Thank you for joining me. And I'm glad you were able to join me this week instead of last week. And I probably will see you guys again. Well, it'll probably be 2025 before I see you again, unless I get inspired. If so, I'll check in with you. But yeah, so have a wonderful rest of 2024, the rest of the year of strength. I will join you next year in the year of the Hermit, and we will see what happens next. Y'all have a great week. Bye.